As promised, Senator Tim Scott, I guess, just off the floor of the Senate following the vote on the USA Freedom Act. Welcome, Senator Scott. How in the heck are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Bobby. It's good to be back on the radio with you.
My pleasure. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, ahead of the final vote today, arguing that the civil liberties concerns that Rand Paul and others had expressed prior to the passage of this piece of legislation were overstated, that civil liberties concerns were overstated, and warned that the legislation undermines American security by taking one more tool from our warfighters. There are many back here at home, Senator Scott, that feel as if, especially with the news yesterday, the DOJ is now going to start some special program through Michigan State University to take a look at the postings of so-called right-wing extremists in social media. We feel they are less after Islamic Jihad and more after American citizens.
Well, there's no doubt that there needed to be some reforms to the program. One of the reasons why I voted for the USA Freedom Act was because it really did rein in some of the unanswered questions, and they wove it together in the form of legislation that moved us in the right direction. I was thankful that my good friends in the House, folks like Trey Gowdy and others, really felt like this was the right direction, as I did as well. If you think about the end of the Section 215 part of it, that really did allow for this massive collection of metadata with no real answer to the definition of the word relevant. It's hard to argue that you did not need some transformation, some revision to the way that we were doing what we were doing.
No question.
And we do. It's a fascinating topic of individual rights and privacy and national security. I think the USA Freedom Act has done the best to try to balance both.
So the most egregious parts of Section 215 of the Patriot Act are now gone, or will be in 6 months. Is that right?
Exactly. So what the House did was, and what we concurred with, was that there's a 6-month transition away from the current metadata program in an attempt to restore confidence with the American people, and at the same time provide the necessary tools for our national security apparatus to work through and to include, when necessary, going to a court to get an order to go deeper if they need to. But they need to have that threshold to go through in order for us to be able to justify its existence and to protect the rights of our everyday citizens. And frankly, what I've tried to do is make sure that we put an end to the misnomer of what we were doing. There is no eavesdropping in conversations. There's no collection of emails on the Section 215 that ended, but there is so much misinformation that I thought it was appropriate not only to inform the public, but also head in the direction that I think is going to hopefully keep our country safe and at the same time protect our individual rights and privacy.
Maybe NSA could find some of Hillary's missing emails, huh?
You know, they would spend time. It would be an appropriate use of time looking for those emails because no one can find them.
No kidding. Let's talk about what happened this morning, Senator Scott. Senate Finance Committee hearing earlier today. You gave IRS Commissioner John Koskinen and the IG for Treasury for Tax Administration, J. Russell George, a hard way to go, and rightly so, because we've seen one example after another of the IRS with a pattern of negligence and worse, because, of course, we know about they're going after nonprofit groups based on their political affiliation, that is targeting conservative groups, the lost Lois Lerner emails, the thousands of courtesy hang-ups during the last filing season, and now this latest example, 100,000 taxpayers having their personal data exposed in another breach. These guys, are they running Windows 95 over there, Senator, or what?
You know, I'm not sure what they're running, but we know they're running in the wrong direction. And frankly, with the power of intimidation, you said it so well. Can you imagine calling in the height of the season looking for help and having a courtesy hang-up? Well, I'm not sure how you make a hang-up courteous, but I guess the IRS has figured out how to do that. But they cannot figure out how to spend $1 billion a year on $1 billion a year, Bobby, for just IT.
There was a time when that used to be serious money.
Well, I know that our debt is absolutely egregious, but at the end of the day, $1 billion is still, for a system like the IRS's. If you get $1 billion for 10 consecutive years, that's real money.
Yeah, it does eventually add up, doesn't it? Let's talk for a moment about TPA and TPP, because there has been a great deal of discussion, as I'm sure you're aware, and a lot of talk in social media about it. You voted for the TPA. Have you read the TPP and the secret room they have established for that?
I have been in the TPP secret room, and one of the reasons why I supported TPA is because we should not do deals in private. We need as much sunshine on the deals, trade deals, so that the average person in the country, not just senators that have to go into a secret vault, but the average person in the country deserves to know before we vote what's in the deal. TPA requires that sunlight, that sunshine, and that's an important part of the conversation and a very important part of the process.
Well, this sounds like Nancy Pelosi. We have to pass the bill to find out what's in it.
How awful is that? It's just something that I can't stomach. And so my thought is TPP is a long ways away still, months away. We need to first make sure that every facet of the TPP can be understood. The TPA authority literally says that every tranche, every bucket of the negotiations, the Congress must be a part of, and the American people will get to know what we're negotiating.
But
bills.
Isn't it true, Senator Scott, that unfortunately you in the Senate and members of the House as well would be unable to add any amendments to it? It would just be a straight up or down vote, right?
The question, that's a really good question. So the way that the process works is we would have an opportunity to help set the framework that we expect the administration to work within, and or have the ability to snap back or eliminate TPA for each trade agreement that we believe that the administration is working outside of the framework that we had previously discussed.
So it's not a blanket authority on TPA?
It is definitely not a blanket authority. I've said before that it is not your mama's TPA, because in the old days there was very little interaction along the way. This time around, we are in a position to actually be a part of the process and help create the frame that we expect the administration to work within. One of the things that I had as an amendment was to make sure that all U.S. laws are the authority for any agreement that we engage in, especially as it relates to what happens with the TPP. If there is anything in the language that suggests that it will not be U.S. law, it's a violation of the TPA.
Well, and it would be unconstitutional on its face. I know that you're familiar, Senator Scott, with the objections of your compatriot from Alabama, Senator Jeff Sessions, who wrote an extensive piece about his objections to TPP. He cited, amongst other things, too much power ceded to the executive branch, that it would hurt American workers by allowing more foreign workers into the country. He made the point that it cedes sovereign authority to international powers, doesn't deal with currency manipulation problems. You see these as problems as well.
Well, I certainly see that I wouldn't agree with my good friend from Alabama on everything that you just named, but I certainly see that it is necessary for us to have oversight. I think about the fact that trade has been good for South Carolina, especially when we think about companies like BMW, Michelin, Volvo, the port, our port, and the Boeing company. And I think about the fact that we have real champions of conservatism, like Senator Risch, who is top 3 most conservative senators year in and year out, Senator Cruz, Senator Rubio, all in support of TPA, and myself, of course. And so what I see is that there is real opportunity and reasons to be concerned that we do not cede U.S. sovereignty. That's why when I, as part of the Finance Committee, had an opportunity to offer an amendment that I had the opportunity to withdraw, because Section 8 of the TPA specifically and clearly spells out that U.S. sovereignty cannot be circumvented by any agreements going forward. TPA is the apparatus that allows us to view each trade agreement. It is not a trade agreement unto itself. It is simply how we build the framework to discuss future agreements. And by doing it right on the front end, I believe we protect the everyday U.S. citizens and we protect our nation long term.
You mentioned, Senator Scott, that you believe we may still be months away on TPP. Having read it and going through an analytical process of analyzing what's in it, have you reached any conclusion about how you will vote on TPP, or are you going to have to wait and see what the final product is before you decide?
Yeah, we're going to have to wait and see the final product. Honestly, we are in a position where we're looking through it. There are multiple sections to the TPP. It's going to take a lot of time for us to get there. We're going to have to be very careful in our understanding of what we hear that's in it, what I see that's in it, and then making a decision on the facts. We are not there yet, and I'm hopeful that if we, as we've passed through TPA, we'll have an opportunity to bring more of what's in TPP to light. I think it's going to be very good for South Carolina businesses as well as we move forward, not TPP necessarily, but the notion that we can now have more sunlight through the TPA. It will allow us to understand the benefits and, frankly, the concerns of future trade agreements. And I'm not going to be a guaranteed yes on any trade agreements unless I believe it's in the best interest of the American citizens. I will say that as we analyze the previous countries that we are trading with versus the countries that we are not trading with through a trade agreement, we actually have a surplus with those countries that we have a trade agreement, and we are running a deficit against those countries we do not have an agreement. So it seems like a trade agreement strengthens our position and provides for better access to new markets for our companies and for our citizens, and that's a fact. And it's important that 95% of our future market is outside of the U.S. borders. So I want to make sure that as we move forward, we do it right.
Okay, gotcha. And you mentioned sunlight. That is a primary concern that I hear all the time. How good can TPP be if they have to keep it under a lock and key with this high level of secrecy?
Well, I think that one of the ways that we answer that question effectively is to make sure that TPA brings more sunlight to TPP, because if we can't do it in the middle of the day, so to speak, my mother said that nothing good happens after 11 o'clock.
She was right.
So we're going to make sure that there are no revisions to that. Some people want it to be 2 a.m. I'm going to keep it at 11 o'clock and allow us to have sunlight on TPP and any other future agreement. If that does not happen, I can't in good conscience be in a position to say that I'm going to vote for something that no one understands or has even seen.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Senator Tim Scott. Senator, thanks for your time from Washington
Absolutely.
today. Look forward to seeing you when you get. Are you coming back soon?
I am coming back soon. I'll be home this weekend. I'm going to be I think it's in Anderson Sunday,
Excellent.
talking to the guys at Boise State.
That sounds good. Look forward to seeing you when you get back here, Senator.
Look forward to it. God bless.
You too. Take care.